Timirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmaya Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadavaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Prabhajantamana Paityam Krityam Dvaipaino Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putre Titam Mayatayo Taravo Vinidustam Sarvabhutam Hridimana Toshmi. I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Leela Prabhishta Om Astal Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering the same again millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Nitya Leela Prabhishta Om Astal Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and all our divine Rupanuga Guru Vargya, my Dandavat pranams, and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams to everybody. So today is a junction day. We've completed 12 chapters, and now we're coming into the second division of the Abhidheya, the Dasamula. So we'll begin our Foul Shruti. I'm not sure where we were up to yesterday. I think we're up
11th.
to 11. Okay, so I can do it today. Jaiva-Dharma Pateshe Shura Bhakti Hoy Jaiva-Dharma Napadile Kave Bhakti Noy. One who reads Jaiva-Dharma with faithful deliberation will surely attain Shuddha Bhakti. But one who does not read Jaiva-Dharma can never attain Bhakti. So now, after the completion of the 12th chapter, we are very confident of what is Shuddha Bhakti. We know what is Karma Mishra Bhakti. We know what is Gyan Mishra Bhakti. We know what is Bhakti Mishra Karma and Bhakti Mishra Gyan. And their objectives are fruit of activities and mukti. So now we're narrowing down our goal to bhakti. And the fruit of bhakti is Krishna Prem. So this Shuddha Bhakti, this is Shuddha Bhakti. And it's capsulated, of course, in the verse, Anyabalasita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam, Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam, Bhakti Uttama. This Bhakti Uttama. This is, close the door there. This Uttam Bhakti, this is the description. There's also another beautiful verse, Sapo Padi Vinimruktam, Tatparapena Nirmalam, Rishikesham, Sevanam Bhakti Uttama. This is also describing what is Shuddha Bhakti. Rupanuga Abhiman Pate Drita Hoy, Jaiva-Dharma Vimukake Dharma Hine Koi. Faithfully reading Jaiva-Dharma will surely strengthen one's Abhiman as a Rupanuga, follower of Sri Rupa Goswami. One who is averse to reading Jaiva-Dharma is certainly devoid of religious principles. So it's very nourishing and pleasing to the ear just to hear the name of Rupa Goswami. When we think of Rupa Goswami, we think of our entire line. He is the head of our line. Mahaprabhu filled his heart in Prayag for 10 days with all the truths necessary to come to this platform of Krishna Prem. And then a year later, Rupa Goswami was in Puri Dham itself and reading sections from his beautiful Vidagdha Madhav and Lalita Madhav to all the Vaishnavas. He was sitting at the Siddha Bakul tree. And did you go there today? No. At the Siddha Bakul tree, all the Vaishnavas had assembled, and Mahaprabhu, the day before, he had seen the beautiful handwriting, and he said it looked like a row of pearls of Rupa Goswami. And he'd seen this writing, and then the next day, he called all the senior Vaishnavas, Advaitaracharya, Nityananda Prabhu, Ramananda Roy, Swarup Damodar, Bhakrashra Pandit, all of the senior Vaishnavas came, and Rupa Goswami was encouraged to read sections from his Vidagdha mother. And he reads this beautiful verse, Anapita chirim chirat karuna bharatinokalo samarapaitam unnata ujvala rasam swabhakti shriyam hari purata sundarata tikaramba satipita sadahridare kandaresvaratu vasachinandana. So this is it's like an invocation verse that he writes in his introduction. And Krishnadas Kaviraj, he uses it 3 times in glorification of Rupa Goswami. Just to think of Rupa Goswami. What's that? Priya Sarupe, Daita Sarupe, Prema Sarupe, Sahajavi Rupe, Nijana Rupe, Prabhueka Rupe, Tatana Rupe, Swavilasa Rupe. This beautiful verse is describing who is Rupa Goswami. Such beauty, the same beauty as Radhika, because he's the closest maidservant to Radhika. Without understanding what is this Manjari Bhav, how can we begin to understand who is Mahaprabhu? What has Mahaprabhu come to give? Has he just come to give Vaidhi Bhakti? Then you haven't understood Mahaprabhu. Has he just come to give the holy name separately from Raganuga Bhakti? Then we haven't understood Mahaprabhu. And without understanding Mahaprabhu, how can we absorb this unique gift and mission? So our whole life can be spent trying to absorb ourselves in the sweetness and speciality of Mahaprabhu and his teachings, which only come, because what did Mahaprabhu write? Mahaprabhu didn't actually write anything. He spoke the Shikshastikam. And all of these writings, and in the Upadeshamrita, it's described in the beginning that Rupa Goswami, he heard Mahaprabhu speaking these verses, Vacho Vegam, Manasakura Vegam, Jiva Vegam, etc. He heard him speaking at Tihara Prayasyascha, heard him speaking these verses on the beach in Puri. And then Rupa Goswami goes back and he enumerates those verses and puts them down as the Upadeshamrita. So he gives us that from Mahaprabhu. He gives us the Shikshastikam also because he wrote it down. All the prayers are all given by Rupa Goswami. And Sanatana Goswami also gave so many prayers. And then Jiva Goswami was always working with Rupa Goswami and very carefully listening to all his books that he was writing. And then Jiva Goswami is explaining all of these books himself, especially in the Sandarbhas. Jiva Goswami, when he was banned from being with Rupa Goswami in that pastime where he contradicted the old man, Vallabha Acharya, Rupa Goswami wasn't happy with that, sent him away. And in that crocodile hole in Nandagan, where Jiva Goswami was lamenting, in that deep moment of lamentation, Jiva Goswami conceived of his Sandarbhas, the 6 Sandarbhas, and they totally open out and take us right into the very deepest portions of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So these Sandarbhas are essential for the full flowering of the Bhagavatam to manifest in the heart of the Jiva. So we've discussed that section before, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur is mentioning this Rupanuga, follower of Rupanuga. One who is averse to reading Jaiva-Dharma is certainly devoid of religious principles. That's what he just said in the previous verse. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur understands this is Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga, we have a memory from 12 o'clock till 12 o'clock. Memory doesn't stay there. So Manda Sumanda Matayo, Manda Bhagya Uparudita. That these are the deficiencies of this age because of the pollution in the atmosphere, the pollution in the food, the pollution in the sound vibration of where we are. Everywhere is polluted. So the consciousness can't remain steady. Very difficult for the consciousness to remain steady. Therefore, to become focused and steady in the Shastras is very difficult. Excuse me. Java Jivane Je Pada Jaiva-Dharma Bhaktiman Se Jana Brita Jnana Karma. One who faithfully reads Jaiva-Dharma throughout his entire life will be endowed with bhakti and will surely realize the futility of jnana and karma. Gora, can you turn that fan off too? So yes, we've been discussing this. We've just discussed that in the 12th chapter. Try to remember where all these teachings are in the Jaiva-Dharma. So we can use the Jaiva-Dharma as an index when we need it, when we want to reference where is Gyan and Karma opened out. And it's in the 12th chapter. Bhukti is also there in the 12th chapter. So it's very helpful to know our way around. It's like any book. It's like Jiva Goswami in his demonstration of the Sandarbhas and Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur in his commentaries. Both of them just run up and down the Bhagavatam like a staircase. Sometimes they're talking about the first canto, sometimes they're talking about the 8th canto, then they're into the 5th canto, and you can sense the fluency that they have absorbed in these shastras, because we know these shastras are ever fresh at every single sentence, every letter, every word. They're all transcendental. So they're all filled with complete astonishment. This achintya bhav runs throughout. And if the sadhaka is practicing nicely, he's going to be feeling that astonishment. Every time, just like with Jaiva-Dharma, we're feeling and experiencing this astonishment with every page that we're reading, even though we've read it many times before, but it's still absolutely astonishing, because they're all transcendental truths. Transcendental truths are not static, they are ecstatic. So this is a wonderful appreciation. Krishnera Ramala Seva Lavi Senara Seva Sukamagnarahe Sada Krishna Para. Such a man, being fully devoted to Sri Sri Radha Krishna Yugal Kishore, and having attained their Amal Prem Seva, remains forever merged in the bliss of such immaculate loving service. Yes, the bliss of immaculate loving service, not the bliss of my own self-realization. It's described in the stage of ruchi. There are two types of ruchi. There is the ruchi, the taste, when because I've just come to the stage of Nishna, and when my own consciousness becomes very illuminated. There's a certain taste in that. Of course there's a taste in that. But if we remain just tasting the illumination of my own consciousness, that's not the final sadhya. The final sadhya is this Amul Prem Seva, this seva to Radha and Krishna. As soon as we have the word seva, there has to be a subject and an object. That's the principle. Without seva, there's no subject and object. It's just me, 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 me. So this false ego, the false ego, this has to be purified. And this will be, understand that we're assimilating a lot of gyan. At the same time, all of this gyan is focused on the objective of bhav bhakti. Unless our objective is bhav bhakti and then prema bhakti, the absorption in our gyan is futile. It will give no ultimate happiness to the soul. It'll just be like so many signposts, but the jiva isn't actually going to the destination of those signposts. He's just getting familiar with all the signposts, where they're pointing this way, that way, etc. You're understanding the direction of the Shastra. But if you haven't attained that bhav, that mood, that bliss of seva, then actually your devotional service hasn't even really begun. It hasn't really started. It's still on the peripheral. Gyan is good and it's very purifying. The weight, the gravity of Gyan will purify the material intoxication. But Gyan is not going to bring us to bhakti. It's a big topic to appreciate. I can personally remember when my Gurudev first left, that infusion of transcendence that was constantly coming from him was suddenly not there. And I thought for some time, a year or so, oh, the path must be Gyan. And then burying myself in all areas of Gyan, but no taste was there. It has to be seva, and seva through Guru.
So seva does not mean only the physical seva, it means like the mental seva, also like the naam and all this.
Well, it means bhav. Bhav is that mood. If you're cleaning a floor and you're doing it with bhav, That's pure seva. You're doing it with a mood to please, say you're cleaning the temple. You're doing it with a mood to please Radha and Krishna. But if you're doing it because you think, oh, it's my duty, it's this time of day, I have to do it every day, that's not going to give you so much benefit. So it's the bhav, it's the mood with whichever you do the seva. If you're washing the pots or cooking if you're cooking for the devotees and you're just going into cooking mode, but you're not remembering that you're going to be actually offering all of this to Krishna. Will he be happy with the way I'm doing this? Will the Vaishnavas also be happy with the way I'm doing this? This mood of seva, if that consciousness is cultivated deeply, significantly, and it's not only seva to Guru, it's also seva to all the Vaishnavas. How is Guru happy? Guru is happy when all the Vaishnavas are happy. When the sadhaks are serving as many conditioned souls or associates as they can. My Gurudev wrote one book called Harmony, and he talks a lot about this, serving the Vaishnavas. Serving the Vaishnavas is very important. And how can you serve the Vaishnava? All kinds of different ways in kirtan. And what is the greatest kirtan is Hari Katha. Doing actual chanting kirtan is beautiful and blissful. But the Hari Katha also, cultivation of this is also very beautiful because you're trying to inspire the devotees' hearts to this seva to Krishna. Always that mood, that bhav must be there. Okay, so now we come to our second section today. This describes the fundamentals of Sambandha, Abhedeya, and Prayojan. So all of these truths will be unpacked in the Dasamula. But just before we go into the Dasamula, we should refresh. Shama is very good at refreshing. Do you want to do one or two chapters? Can you pass it? Do you want to do? Are you ready to do or not? Not now, okay. So the first chapter is the meeting between Sannyasi Thakur and Prem Das Babaji in Goldrun Dweep. And we hear the story of Sannyasi Thakur, a Brahma Gyani, very advanced Brahma Gyani, but no bhav. And he sees the bhav of that Vaishnava chanting, and even slipping while he's chanting. He's in so much ecstasy. And from that one momentary darshan, that triggered his whole inquiry into what have the Vaishnavas got? How are the Vaishnavas able to have such bliss? And him, in his practice of Brahmagyan, was not receiving any type of bliss like the bliss that he experienced. But it's described that because of his abhiman of being a sannyasi, he couldn't actually go and talk with that Vaishnava. So then he searched and eventually came to Navadvip, and he meets Prem Das Babaji. And I've said before how it's interesting, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was such a lover of Srimad Bhagavatam. He wrote that Bhagavat Akka Marichi Mala, and he wrote the Krishna Samhita. And you just know that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a deep lover of the Bhagavatam. So it seems a similarity in this text that Sannyasi Thakur is like the Brahmavad Shukadev Goswami. Shukadev Goswami was coming in from the forest, hearing those beautiful verses, Aho Bakayam Stanakala Kutam, Baharpita Nata Bharavapura. He was hearing these verses that the wood collectors were told to chant by Vyasadeva when they went into the forest to try and attract Shukadev Goswami back to hear this Bhagavatam. So Shukadev Goswami was attracted. This Aho Bakayam Stanakala Kutam is such an attractive verse that Krishna, he killed the demoness Putana, and yet who came to murder him, and yet he awarded her with the nursemaid Swarup in Goloka Vrindavan. So when Shukadev Goswami heard this, he was thinking, who is this? This verse is described as an example of Krishna's compassion. This is like the compassionate verse, so to speak, of the Bhagavatam. Aho bakayam stanakala kutam, jigtangsi apaya yayapira sadapi, Labhe gatim datri uchitam tatonyam kamva dayalam sharanam vrajema. This verse is like the compassion verse of the Bhagavatam. So, Sannyasi Thakur, he's asking beautiful questions in the first chapter. He asks, if Dharma is one, why are there so many different examples of religiosity, etc.? And then Babaji, he unpacks that whole question in the first chapter about the three vastus and the swabhav, the nature of the intrinsic soul. He gives the example of ice and swabhav and nishag. By that association, it's become hard, etc. So this is the body of the first chapter. And then the second chapter, Sannyasi asks these two beautiful questions about the infinitesimal soul. If the soul is infinitesimal, how can if it's so small, how can it be eternal and all pervasive? And then Babaji, he answered, huh? How can he be pure? Yes. How can he be completely pure if he's so small? Then Babaji answers, minuteness is not a trait of transcendence. Just because it's very small, it doesn't mean that you can't be transcendental. Then he gives an example of a fire, the sparks coming out of the fire. A tiny little spark can ignite the whole world if there's enough fuel for it. If there's enough dry grass and twigs, etc., one tiny spark can send the whole fire everywhere. Coming from the fire, the source is the fire. So the jiva is likened to that. Sometimes the jiva is likened to the atomic rays of the sun. Sometimes he's likened to the sparks of a fire. It's the same principle, the same analogy. That spark of the fire has all the qualities of the fire, but it's very, very small. So this is vibhinamsa. Vibhinamsa means separated. So this is the vibhinamsa nature of the jiva, as opposed to the swa-anksa. There's anksi, that's Krishna. Then there's swa-amsa. Swa means own, Krishna's own parts. And those are all the avatars. Baladev, Kurma, Matsya, Varaha, Shringadev, Parasharama Muni, etc. All of these avatars, more than 10 avatars, but they are all swamsa. And then we are vibhinamsa. We are coming from them. We are coming from Baladev Prabhu. Baladev is the first manifestation coming from Krishna, coming through Swarup Shakti. And then he is manifesting the jivas in Goloka Vrindavan and the jivas in Vaikuntha and the jivas coming from this Brahmand location made of the Tatashta Shakti. So these three types of jivas, they're all coming from Baladev Prabhu, but they're all vibhinamsa. So this is described something in that second chapter. There's a long discussion there, very beautiful, about what is nitya and what is naimitic. This is the topic of the second chapter. This is exactly like the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. What is eternal and what is temporary? If we don't know the nature of these eternal and temporary dharmas, how can we recognize our predicament here? How can we realize I'm in a very temporary situation? Why am I putting all my effort into this temporary material body? This body is going to die. Why am I so concerned with so many aspects of this body? So we have to consider all of this carefully. And then the third chapter is when Sannyasi Thakur becomes Vaishnava Das. And now he's in the master's position. He's instructing Lahari Mahashai in Sandhya Vandanam, because Lahari Mahashai has asked this very beautiful question. And Sannyasi Vaishnava Das, he answers very beautifully about the transcendental nature of the Vaishnava. He's not subjected to these temporary dharmas of the Sandhya Vandana. He goes beyond that. So again, it's the same thread. What is the distinction between Nitya and Naimitic? This thread goes all the way through the first 12 chapters, and it's going to come into these next chapters also, but not quite in the same focused way. We're supposed to have learnt this by the time we reach the second portion. We're supposed to understand that. And then in the 4th chapter, Vaishnava Das Babaji, he's instructing again. Now Lahari has taken that huge step to accept Vaishnava Das Babaji because he sees him as a Brahmin. Lahari Mahashai is also a Brahmin, so he's peaceful on that front. And then he takes shelter of him completely. And then Vaishnava Das is going to instruct him on, again, what is Nitya and what is Naimitic. That 3rd chapter, by the way, it's called Naimitic Dharma should be relinquished. So it's all in the same channel, so to speak. So in the 4th chapter, then Vaishnav Das Babaji, he's explaining to Lahari Mahashai. Then in the 5th chapter, Lahari Mahashai, he's taking the role of guru in relationship to his son, Devi Das. And he takes Devi Das to the assembly of the Vaishnavas, and Devi Das sees their respect that they give to the Muslims that come. The Qazi comes, and he's shocked by that. He can't handle that. His background is not purified enough to be open and broad enough. He's too sectarian. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a great opponent to this idea of sectarianism. He said many times, sectarianism is the enemy of the supreme truth. He says it constantly. And sectarian thought exists throughout because we think it's our false ego. Oh, my group is best, my sangha is best, etc., etc. We're not having proper transcendental vision that all jivas are jivara sarupoi Krishna and Nityadas, not just those in my sangha in particular. If I'm convinced that my sangha has a special jewel, then I should share that special jewel, but not in an aggressive way. That doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't do the practitioner any good. It doesn't do the person who's being berated by that. I've said before many times, this is a very tender, sensitive condition of the heart that needs to be softened through affection and love. Everything has to be in that channel. This is why Gyan doesn't go that area. Gyan is very harsh, actually, and Vairagya also. Tapasya, like a yogi, it can be very hard without the softness and sweetness because the heart hasn't been melted by bhav. It's this bhav bhakti that is our principal focus. So in the 5th chapter, Lahari is instructing his son, and his son Devi Das, he goes to the kutia of Vaishnav Das Babaji. He receives more encouragement about the Vedic teachings from Vaishnava Das. And then in the next chapter, Lahari is still instructing Devi Das, but Devi Das has become unhappy now. And he's gone and collected a whole lot of smarter Brahmins, Chudamani, etc., to come and contest, debate with the Vaishnavas. And this is a beautiful chapter because many incredible truths are brought out. And that character, Vaishnava Das Babaji, he's the one who is presenting all these truths. But Lahari Mahashai was the one who inaugurated that assembly, so to speak, through his son. So that's the 6th chapter. Then the 7th chapter is the beautiful story of Chandidas and Damayanti. This chapter itself is really typical of Bengali activities, you can say. How the family, the children, they wanted to take the money of the mother and father. These things go on. If you read the Bengali newspapers, they're probably there all the time, These types of things. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur is picking up some subject matter that's going to attract the general people. He's not making this book just for the Vaishnavas who are already advanced in devotion. He's making this Jaiva-Dharma, he's making this statement for the whole world. It's like the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's for the whole world to connect with Krishna in. So this story of Chandidas and Damayanti leaving their home with that Vaishnavi, who's their Vardman Prakash Guru, and then they hear after the first day their children have broken into the house, stolen all the money, and they become absolutely devastated because it's described they were so attached to their money. Their whole lives, they were very tight. They weren't serving any Vaishnavas. They weren't spending their money on any Vaishnava seva. So look what happened in the end. All the money just went. Our resources should be used in the glorification of Krishna. If we're saving for what? For some material security? We are all destined to die. We need to take shelter of Krishna, and then we won't have any material difficulties. Krishna, Lord Jagannath, Gopinath, all of these personalities we can take full shelter of, especially our Guru Vargya. So eventually they do, because they're living in the land of Navadvip. So by the power and purity of the environment, that very quickly begins to act on their inner consciousnesses, their higher consciousnesses. Then he opens a little shop and then makes some money, starts serving. Now he's starting to serve the Vaishnavas, even though he doesn't have anything this time. But if he earns a rupee, he spends 50 paise on Vaishnavas. So now this is his whole consciousness has become actually liberated just by that one and you would think that, I mean, at one point, Chandidas and his wife were ready for suicide because they thought they'd lost everything in life. But within a few days, when they discovered the sweetness of seva, then immediately they woke up their higher states of consciousness. Then they meet a friend called Yadav Das. He takes them to the assembly of Vaishnavas in Godrum. And Damayanti, she's not allowed, which is interesting, because she's in a woman's body. So the woman's body is prohibited from coming in to the assembly of those renunciants. But nevertheless, she also gets completely purified, of course, by the association with her husband. And then Yadavadas, they are greeted by Anantadas Babaji, and he explains the nature of samsara. So in this 7th chapter, this is where there's 2 long paragraphs saying, I am a Brahmana, I am a Kshatriya, I am a Shudra, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm happy, I'm unhappy, I'm ugly, I'm handsome, I'm weak, I'm strong, on and on and on and on and on it's saying that. And then it says, this is my house, this is my family, this is my identity, this is all this minus is there. And at the end, Bhaktivinoda Thakur concludes, this colossal affair represents samsara. So those are 2 very powerful paragraphs. Actually, if you're interested in those paragraphs and looking at them regularly, I've got a beautiful little chart on my website with those 2 paragraphs singled out, because it's very helpful. Why does Bhaktivinoda Thakur say so repeatedly? Why does he go on and on and on and on and on and on, referencing our material identities? Because we're so stupid. We're so dull in this age. We need to hear it again and again and again and again and again. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is so merciful. He just says it again and again and again. We need it repeatedly, because this thick Mayic delusion has become so almost impregnable. We need to hear it repeatedly. This is why we need to hear Harikatha every single day. Bhaktivinoda Thakur just said we need to read Jaiva-Dharma every single day. We need to touch Srimad Bhagavatam every single day. We need to touch Chaitanya Charitamrita every single day. Even if it's just one verse from each of those granthas, we'll be in touch with the principal current in this age. Someone is throwing us a lifeline. What does that lifeline consist of? It consists of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It consists of the Jaiva-Dharma. It consists of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That is the lifeline. And how do we hold on to that lifeline to pull ourselves out of this well? By repeatedly accessing those scriptures and hearing them as often as possible, to build our daily routine in our lives, at least to hear one verse from the Bhagavatam and one commentary from the Bhagavatam every single day. It'll put us in touch with transcendence almost instantly. It has that. It's like an antidote to the poisonous effects of this Kali Yuga. And of course, that coupled with the Hare Krishna mantra, we have a good chance of moving and progressing forward. So that was the 7th chapter. And the 8th chapter is the beautiful discussion between Nityananda Das Babaji about what is Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttam bhaktas, and a very beautiful explanation on all of those. What is Kanishta, Madhyam, Kanishta, Uttam, etc. What is Kanishta, Madhyam, Madhyam, Uttam, Madhyam, etc. Because there's 3 divisions of each of these also. So this goes through very carefully, showing us And in that chapter, it's built in like Vaishnava etiquette, how to behave with each other. All these are very broad and very supportive because I'm just saying the peripheral of each chapter. But when you go into the chapter, it's very, very intense and dense appreciations of the philosophy. It's very beautiful knowledge. I'm just describing the peripheral so we can remember what's in each chapter. Then the ninth chapter is that rascal Digambar come to challenge. Now Lahari Mahashai has become Advaita Das Babaji, and he's challenging him with his apparent material opulence. Why are you Vaishnavas sitting wearing just one or two pieces of cloth, eating, potatoes, basically, no, not eating elaborate foodstuffs and things like that. So it's a beautiful challenge, actually, about the materialist challenging the way of life of the Vaishnavas. And it gives the Vaishnava a chance to really appreciate what he has, what jewels he has, what opulence the Vaishnava actually has, how the opulence of the Vaishnavas is so superior. It's a little bit like that Hira Panchami festival, when Shivas Thakur is glorifying all the opulence of Dwarka and the jewels and so on of her Lakshmi Dev. But then Swarup Damodar, he begins to talk about the opulence of Vrindavan, the Kamandenus, cows that can give anything, the Chintamani flowers that can also give anything, the, the cows, the flowers, what are the other ones? The trees, yes, the Kalpavriksha trees. The trees, they can give anything, but the inhabitants of Braj, they just utilize them for the decoration of their body with the flowers, and they just appreciate the nature and service of those trees, for example. So, just reminds me of that. Again, between the real opulence of transcendence and the apparent opulence of material prosperity. So this is all in the ninth chapter. Then the 10th chapter is about the history of Vaishnavism, which is another fascinating part of the whole package, the whole jigsaw, so to speak. Where do we fit in ontologically, historically? What is our authenticity? What is our roots, our source? Vaishnavism comes from the very moment of creation, when Lord Brahma took his birth from the lotus flower. This is actually the initial conception of Vaishnavism. Vaishnavism means to worship, well, literally to worship Vishnu, and that's Garbhodakshai Vishnu in this sense. That's the Ishtadev of Lord Brahma. And then, but it's so much more than that, because it's a recognition of my Jivara Sarup Hoy Krishna Nityadas, my eternal relationship with Krishna. So this is Vaishnava-Dharma. So it begins from that point. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives us that whole history in a beautiful way. And this Nyaya Ratna, it seems like he doesn't really take it all on board, but he takes a lot of it on board. Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur is building these incredible characters that are true. It's not everyone's going to be convinced by these truths straight away. If you wrote a book and everyone was convinced immediately in the book, where would be the reality of it? Because people are all variegated. Some like it hot, some like it cold. Not everyone is going to take it with the same enthusiasm. So this is chapter 10. And then chapter 11 is about the Muslims approaching the Vaishnavas. They're just sitting down there at a temple for Vishnu Priya and Mahaprabhu. The Thakurji that Mahaprabhu, that Vishnu Priya manifested of Mahaprabhu, there's going to be an installation there. So all the Vaishnavas come and they're reading a recitation of Chaitanya Mangal or Chaitanya Bhagavat. It's saying Chaitanya Mangal, but it's probably Chaitanya Bhagavat. The name probably hadn't been changed then. So we get the historical place in history where this pastime is taking place. And then the mullah arrives with all his educated followers, and they ask beautiful questions about the deity. And this is very helpful for the devotee to know clearly the understanding of the deity. How I'm worshipping stone. Is it stone? Where did some person just carve that out of their imagination? This is what the Muslims are thinking, that you can't worship matter. They're thinking the deity is matter. So they're convinced by, I think it's Gaura Chandra Das Babaji, is the Babaji who's speaking at this time. It's Gaura Chandra Das Babaji. He's speaking about the vision within the saint's mind and consciousness of that Thakurji will manifest in the heart of that purified sadhak. And then from that manifestation in the consciousness, they are creating the murti form. And then when the murti form is offered mantras and so on, that Parampratishta, then the murti form will manifest completely as the Supreme Lord. And we have examples where the murti is walking around. That Shakshi Gopal walks from Vrindavan all the way down to Katak near Puri. And there's many, many examples of Jagannath Dev, so many examples of him walking and talking around different places. Many times the deity has spoken. That Raghunandan Das, when he was a little boy, was offering sweet, and the Thakurji, Madan Mohan, wasn't accepting. And then the boy started to cry. So then Madan Mohan came down, took it completely. Next day, his father, Mukunda Das, he didn't believe this and hiding and watching. And the little boy crying even more because Thakurji knew that Mukunda was hiding behind a curtain. But nevertheless, Thakurji came down and took the sweet and took one bite, and then Mukunda came out and caught the Thakurji out. And that deity is still there today. When you go to Shrikant, you see that deity there with a half-eaten ladu in his hand. So how sweet. The deity is showing us totally, fully his personality. So this is just, huh?
Even Allah, his hand was burnt here. So he grabs the hot key. So then Pujari tries to grab his hand, Lord's hand. So it spills on his hand. And you can see the burn now on his hand.
Who was that?
Alarnath.
Alarnath.
Alarna.
Alalanath.
Alarnath.
Maharaj. Here he is there near Puri.
Alalanath.
Alarnath.
Yes, yes. You have to tell me that story after. I don't know that story. Sounds good. But there are many examples of this. And this again, from the very beginning until the end, all of these indications are strengthening our Shraddha. From the very start, the ladder from Shraddha to Prem. So that Shraddha is always increasing. So all of these different aspects to support and strengthen our Shraddha. It's such an amazing composition that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has put all these particular topics together in the first Sambandha section to create our relationship with Krishna. And then in the 12th chapter, we've just completed yesterday, of Brajanath, this Brahmin, brilliant young man who's come now with so many wonderful questions. And he takes shelter of the Vaishnavas. He's in Nyaya, Shastra, Vijay. He goes around debating, etc. And when he just hears the name of Gauranga, that is enough to begin to purify his consciousness. As soon as that's his introduction, basically, to Krishna consciousness, just hearing his name, the name of Sachinandan Gaurahari, when he was told by one new student, have you read the books on Nyaya by Gauranga Mahaprabhu or Nimai Pandit? Who is this Nimai Pandit? Rajanath said. And then all he could think about and immerse his mind in for the next few weeks was Nimai Pandit, Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And then he was influenced to come to the Vaishnavas. And then he meets Raghunath Das Babaji. And then in the association of Raghunath Das Babaji, then he starts to request instructions on bhakti. And we've just finished that incredible chapter yesterday about what is the sadhana and sadhya of bhakti, what is the sadhana and sadhya of mukti, what is the sadhana and sadhya of bhakti. these three principal So try to remember that is in the 12th chapter. Very powerful. Again, it's opening out what is Shuddha Bhakti. It's giving a place for Shuddha Bhakti. So these are the 12 chapters in the first section. So now we come to the second division, and it's described as Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan. So all three topics are going to be woven in to this. So I'll just begin reading this. Chapter 13. Praman and the commencement of Prameya. Now, if you're just hearing this Dasamula for the first time, many people, they get a little bit confused between Praman and Prameya because both words begin with a P. But there's such a huge difference. The Praman means the evidence, Praman, and the Prameya are those topics that are going to be supported by the evidence. So this is the Das Mula. So there's going to be 10 ontological truths, and it's very simple to memorize them. And I hope that all of you listening will make an effort to memorize these. My Gurudev would stress many times, if you know this Dasamula, you can sit confidently in any assembly on the planet and discuss Krishna consciousness. These are ontological truths. The first is the Praman. Then there's going to be 3 about Krishna. Krishna's Aishwarya, Krishna's Shakti, and Krishna, and then Rasa Tattva. These 3, all about Krishna. Then the next 3 are all about the Jiva. What is Jiva-Tattva? What is Vibhinamsa? We've discussed a little bit today. And what is the Jiva who's liberated from Maya? So the 3 about Krishna, 3 about Maya. And then there's the reconciliation, we can call it, of Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. Who is the Jiva in relationship to Krishna? He's a part of Krishna, but he's a very minute part of Krishna. This is Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. This is the 8th Prameya. Then the 9th is Sadhan Bhakti. How to achieve that sadhya, that Sadhan Bhakti. What is that? Is it Vaidhi Bhakti? Is it Raganuga Bhakti? How do I achieve that? And then the 10th Prameya is Priti Bhakti, this understanding of love and affection, Priti. So these are the 10, and it's not a great leap to actually memorize these 3. So we should make some effort for that. These 10 rather. So I'll begin. Late the next afternoon, at the time of Goduli, when the air is thick with dust clouds raised by the cows returning to the Goshala. Now that's a very, very beautiful sentence. Personally, always this sentence really just puts me into another place altogether. When we think of Krishna Leela, this is fully Krishna Leela. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is immersed in Krishna Leela, and he's going to give some very dense tattva and topics, but he's starting with the Leela. Krishna has been away for about 5, 6 hours, 7 hours. This is, he leaves during what is called Prata Leela. He goes to the forest. He wakes in the morning, Nishanta Leela. This is the Astakalya Leela breakdown. There's Nishanta Leela first, and then there's Prata Leela. Then there's Purvana Leela. Purvana Leela is when he gets ready to go to the forest. And at the end of that Purvana Leela section, then he's with the cows in the forest. And then he goes to Radhakund for 5 hours. That's Madhyana Leela. Then there's Apurvana Leela, which is just, again, 2 hours or so time frame. And that's when he goes back to the cowherd boys again. And then this Syayam Leela, which has been described now. This is the Goduli pastime. The separation of the Brijabasis was extreme all day long. All Mother Yashoda can think about is her Lala hungry or not? She's even sending various drinks and so on, foodstuffs to the forest to find them all. And the servants are coming from the palace of Nanda Baba with all various preparations. They've got their tiffins as well, but the Brijabasis don't want to stay out of touch with them. They want to feel that connection. So we get an insight into their tremendous madhurya, their tremendous prem for Krishna. They can't be without Krishna for practically any time. So when Krishna finally returns at about 5:30, 6 o'clock, something like that, depending on the season, it's evening time, and the gray dust has all come up into a huge cloud. The Brijabasis are on the path. They're waiting for Krishna, especially the gopis. They've just seen Krishna for 5 hours during the Madhyana Lila, but they're waiting there in watchtowers, it's described, some of them. Some of them are hiding behind trees, waiting to catch an eye glance of Krishna. And Krishna, he's covered by this dust. I've described before how he has this beautiful garland that has no dust on it, because Sridhar and Subala on the other side, flicking off every time a grain of dust comes onto this beautiful garland. So his garland is very bright, but the rest of him, he's clouded with this beautiful dust, which is enhancing his beauty. His beauty is looking extraordinary when he comes back. And all the cowherd boys, they are all, it's such a beautiful sight. They're all completely colorful. It's described like actors on a stage. They all have bunches of leaves and flowers in their hair, and they have colored ochre on their bodies. And they've just really decked themselves out absolutely beautifully. And they come into the village with such an atmosphere of sweetness, playing all their flutes and their bugles and their drums and all the different instruments. And the devas, of course, will come every day to assist and with the musical accomplishments. So the whole atmosphere is just absolutely surcharged. Krishna's only been away for a few hours. For the Brijabasis, Yugaitam namishene chakshusam naitam sunyaitam jagat sarvam govinda piramare. That this one moment separation seems like a million yugas for the Brijabasis. So when Krishna returns, it's like a cooling shower on their hearts. And all the mothers, their sons have come back. Their thousands of sons have come back. But the mothers all run first to Krishna. And they all, first of all, embrace Krishna. And then they go to their sons. So this is in contradiction to when that Brahma Vimohan Lila begins. And they don't run first to Krishna. They run straight to their own sons, because their own sons have become Krishna's manifestations. So this is there also. So when they come, then Mother Yashoda, she, with her tears, is just giving Krishna practically an abhishek on the spot. And then all the mothers, they go to their own respective sons. They take them home, they bathe them, they oil them, massage them, etc. Krishna is giving a total massage and given some foodstuff straight away from Mother Yashoda. And then he goes to the Goshala to milk the cow. This is all in Sayam Lila. And then he comes back to the Bhojan Laya in Nanda Baba's palace. It's described on the top of Nandishvara hill. And all the cowherd boys come also. They can't be separated from Krishna also. It's described that Subal, even in his dreams, doesn't let go of the hand of Krishna. So we get some insight into the affection, the Krishna prem, that the Brijabasis, their affection is so extraordinary and sweet and powerful and heart-wrenching. And this is what Mahaprabhu is tasting here in the Gambhira. He's relishing that same prem of the gopis, because the gopis, they're with their sidelong glances performing their arti to Krishna, and Krishna's receiving all that, and he's reciprocating with them all. There's the beautiful story in Bhagavad Gita that my Gurudev tells of the young bride who was tried to be checked by her mother-in-law, but she escapes and she goes to the royal road where they're all coming, and she catches, she's in a little room, but she's been locked in. And then Krishna directs a calf straight to that room, but kicks the door open. And then Krishna just looks at this gopi for a second and touches her with his flute. And that gopi just loses all sense of what is happening, anything. And she goes back, and mother-in-law gives her some butter to churn, but instead of churning the butter, she's trying to churn mustard seeds. She has the mustard seeds go like this. It's not butter. And then she's told, all right, you can't do anything. You've been bitten by that black snake. Go and get some water from the well. Take this baby with you. So she's taking the baby, and then she ties the rope to the baby to throw down the well. But then quickly the other gopis say, no, 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 you've got to put a bucket down the well, not the baby. So she's lost this divyan mad, this old sense of reality because of the power of that Krishna prem. This is the effect of Krishna prem. It's so mighty on the consciousness. So this is what all the Brijabasis are all experiencing at this time of Goduli. It's very, very special. It's very special. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur references this at the very beginning of this Dasamula section. Brajanath arrived at Srivasangam. He sat on the raised platform under the dense foliage of the bakula tree and waited for the elderly Babaji Maharaj. Maharaj was waiting in his bhajan kutia, and for some unknown reason, Vatsalya Bhav had arisen in his heart towards Brajanath. So Raghunath Das Babaji is feeling great affection towards, again, this current of love. Without this current of love, this snigdha and affection, nothing can transpire. I said already this evening that the heart can only be influenced by love, nothing else. Babaji was waiting for it, but some unknown reason, Vatsalya Bhav had arisen in his heart towards Brajanath. As soon as a slight sound outside indicated Brajanath's arrival, Babaji came out and lovingly embraced him and took him into his kutia, which was situated at one side of the courtyard in an arbor of kund flowers. There he offered him a seat and sat beside him. We can appreciate the loving nature of his Guru Maharaj at this point. Brajanath took the dust of Babaji Maharaj's feet on his head. Feeling blessed, he said humbly, "O great soul, yesterday you told me that you would instruct me on Dasamula, the fundamental principles of Nimai Pandit's teachings. Kindly bestow this knowledge upon me now." When Brajanath asked this wonderful question, Babaji Mahashai became very happy and said affectionately, "My son, I shall first explain to you the Sutra Shloka of Dasamula, wherein the 10 ontological truths of Dasamula are set out in a condensed form." So this condensed form we can learn. I've just scrolled through them all. 3 about Krishna. First is the Praman, 3 about Krishna, 3 about the Jiva, and then it's Achintya Veda Tattva, then it's Sad, and then it's Priti. Very simple. Just catch it and get it. You are a scholar, so by proper deliberation, you will be able to comprehend the true meaning of this sloka. So I'm just going to read this sloka tonight, and then we'll stop, and then tomorrow we'll continue on this. So this shloka, my Gurudev was very encouraging us all to learn this shloka. It's not so difficult because in this shloka, all these, the praman is there and the 9 prameyas are there. Amnaya praha tattvam harim iha paramam sarva shaktim rasabdim. Tad vibinam samschar jivan prakriti kalvitam tad vimuktam cha bhaved. Veda abeda prakasham sakalam apihare sadhanam shuddha bhaktim. Sadyam tad pritim evati upadishyati janan gaura chandra swayam saha. So this is the verse. And every day we're going to chant, we're going to say this verse so that we'll develop a familiarity with it. And then we'll go through all of the Dasamula prameyas and the praman tomorrow. We'll get into it. So today I think we've just recapped, which was very important, what we've already been through. No point in going forward. And if we forget, it's like in our Bhagavatam, if we go forward but we forget what's in the other cantos, how are we catching this truth in a way that we can act on it and live with it, breathe it. So this Jaiva-Dharma is such special nectar. Jaiva-Dharma ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai.
Jai.
Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki
Jai.
jai. Gaur Premanandi.
Hari Hari.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha. Kripa Sindhubevacha. Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.
Jai Jai Shri Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj ki
Jai.
jai.